Got a glass of water. What is he, 75? You don't have a water bottle? So you, why do you have the glass then?
Because I prefer a glass of water when I'm home, Benny.
So you prefer to waste your dishes and then make.
I refill the glass.
I don't know. I got a water bottle, so like that's for water.
Okay, that's you. I prefer glass.
Fair enough.
Call him Samuel L. Jackson, Mr. Glass. Welcome to the Three Now podcast. I am Ben Pope alongside Brett Schaubs and Mike Cicchetti.
What a way to start, huh?
Oh yeah, this is the Thanksgiving edition. Might be coming up on Thanksgiving, so hope everyone that
before.
celebrates. Well, that's when we're recording, Michael, but we don't know when this is going up.
Right immediately after.
Well, there we go.
Okay.
So, damn, just keep getting interrupted. Joined alongside Mike Cicchetti and Brett Schaubs. We're doing this in our home locations instead of our school venues. So a little bit of a difference here, but doesn't mean any difference here on the pod. Mike, you look spiffy. Maybe you just got a haircut. What's going on?
That is true. I just got a haircut about 2 hours ago. Haven't seen him in like a month and a half. So
That's
it was
long for you.
It is. It is. I usually try to go every 3 weeks, but I like to plan my haircuts around like events or occasions, and I didn't have anything going on until Thanksgiving. So, figured I'll wait a little bit, look like a caveman for a while.
Well, that's a little surprising there. And speaking of surprise, we got meme face down below us, Brett Schaubs. He's
That's
got
crazy.
Well, he did make a meme face. He's also rocking back and forth in his chair a little bit. You got a dress shirt hanging up behind you, Brett. What's that for?
That is actually a hoodie, believe it or not.
Oh.
That is not a dress shirt.
Well, that was a white shirt, so I figured.
The hoodie is from my load of laundry that I brought home. So, gotta stay clean. We don't like to dress up like cavemen.
Don't know if that's a rip at someone. A little awkward there.
It was very much so. And there's a glass again.
Well, speaking of Mr. Glass, we will be talking about all the happenings here from Week 11 in the NFL. We had an interesting week, to say the least, so let's get right into it. One of the bigger storylines from the previous week, Week 10, the Minnesota Vikings beating the Buffalo Bills. That kind of got flipped on its head as they took on the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry World and absolutely got destroyed. 40-3 in favor of the Cowboys. This was an absolute mockery of the Vikings. Big Z, Zadarius Smith, was like, "Oh, I'm feeling like a 9-2 day." Well, you had a 9-2 day because the game was over by 2:00 and the game started at 4:30. So that says enough. Really bad game for the Vikings. Really good game for the Dallas offense. They really found their footing once again. 2 touchdowns for each of the running backs, both Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. So really good bounce back game for Dallas after they lost to Green Bay the previous week. So, guys, I have a question for you about Minnesota. So we saw this great game against Buffalo, but you can argue that Buffalo kind of beat themselves in that game against Minnesota. This game against Dallas, they absolutely got destroyed. We're not able to really do anything against one of the strongest defenses, if not the strongest defense in the NFL right now. Does this prove to either of you that Minnesota may indeed be frauds?
No. At least for me, no. I've seen teams that have gone on to do phenomenal things have fluke games like this. Buffalo last year went to the AFC Championship, but in the first 5 weeks of the season, they lost to Jacksonville 6-3. Final score, where total of 9 points combined coming from a top 3 offense in the NFL last year. It just happens. There are games where you're going to absolutely go nuts and beat the best team in the league, and then you're going to go ahead and pull off a fluke game like this. Everybody has them. Everybody's prone to it. And I don't think this proves that Minnesota is frauds. I think they're still one of the most dominant teams in the league. And I think going forward, this is just kind of a a reset button for them to kind of get back on track and continue to be the Vikings that they've been the last 6-7 weeks.
I agree. I don't see this as a fraudulent team, really. The only thing I see it as is really shaking up the power rankings, especially when it comes to the NFC. Just looking at these teams in the NFC, it's really, really tough to rank them. Not even going by record, just by power of the team. It's really tough to do. But I think this was a good thing for the Vikings in the long term. I think it's a good wake up call for them and will give them motivation to just play their hardest for the rest of the season. So I think it's what they need. They have a fairly easy schedule the rest of the way. So as long as, they stay on track and stay the course, I don't see them falling below 3-4 losses on the year anyways.
Yeah, they have a really easy path to the number 2 seed. It'd be difficult for either San Francisco or maybe Tampa Bay to catch them, but I really don't see it happening. As for the question at hand, if we are talking about Minnesota as are they the biggest contender to the Eagles? Are they really worthy of that 2 seed? Then I'll call them frauds, because even in their game last week against Buffalo kind of beat themselves. They had the 2 interceptions by Josh Allen that really turned the game on its head. The fumble in the end zone that Minnesota was able to recover for a touchdown. In this game, this is probably the best defense that Minnesota's played all year, arguably since probably Philly in week 2. And we saw what Philly was able to do in week 2. They really didn't give Kirk Cousins much of a pocket to work with. Those 2 teams, Philly and Dallas, are probably the best 2 D lines that Minnesota's played all year. And those are the 2 teams that held Kirk Cousins completely in check. We saw the run game was still able to stay strong, and that's probably Dallas's biggest weakness on defense. So Dalvin Cook was able to capitalize on that, but a decent amount of that was down 2 scores, 3 scores. So there are much more open run lanes. For Minnesota, my 2 biggest concerns are them not being able to protect Kirk Cousins, which he's not able to do anything when he's under duress, and their secondary. The Dallas wide receivers didn't really do much. It was all the running backs. Tony Pollard had 6 catches out of the backfield. CeeDee Lamb was pretty much held in check for the majority of the game, and not to fall of his own, he just didn't have many opportunities to do anything. I'm honestly just concerned that Minnesota isn't really going to have that much of a challenge the rest of the way. The 2 biggest games for me, they have the rest of the season, in the regular season at least, are their next 2. Thanksgiving against the Patriots, and then the following week against the Jets. Probably the 2 best defenses they're going to play aside from Dallas and Philly. Let's see what they're able to do. I think they win both of those games, but it's literally just because both are really struggling on offense right now. They're not able to come up with much of anything. So to answer the question at hand, I think Minnesota is probably more fraudulent than we'd like to admit. But I think a lot of people are accepting of that at this point in time. They recognize that the 2 losses aren't really what Minnesota should be viewed as.
Yeah.
All right, no comments after that. Cool. We can. Oh my. Okay. We can go on to one of the 2 teams that I mentioned, and I guess kind of both of them in their matchup this past weekend. The Patriots against the Jets in Gillette, a 10-3 victory for the Patriots on a punt return touchdown for one of the 5 Joneses on the Patriots, Marcus Jones, Alex Green. Surprisingly, you know who he is, but I don't believe you. Aside from that, the biggest storyline coming after this game was something that was said prior or after the game, and it was Zach Wilson just talking about his performance in this contest. Completed less than 50% of his passes, only 77 passing yards on the day. Really was not able to muster anything on offense. They've been really struggling since Breece Hall went down for the season. He pretty much said there was no accountability, that the offense needed to be taken, simply saying no when asked if the offense let the defense down. And now just finding out today, this morning, that Mike White will be starting for the Jets this upcoming weekend against the Bears. We don't know if Justin Fields will be starting in that contest against New York, but at least talking about the Jets. Second straight time they've drafted a first-round quarterback of this caliber. First Sam Darnold, now Zach Wilson. That just not working out in New York, whether it's the quarterback talent, whether it's the system that he's in. Robert Saleh has developed a really good defense, no discredit there, but offensively, they've been really shaky this entire season. Do we think the Jets should allow Zach Wilson to have another shot? Or should I say, can the Jets really afford it?
Yes and no, because we know, and me and Ben, the whole, even since the offseason, have been tooting the horn that we think Zach Wilson's going to be the second best quarterback in the East. Obviously, we hold that all currently, but he shows flashes of being a very, very impressive quarterback. He just can't do the simple things. So I say yes and no because they're a really, really young team, right? And they have time to work through things. I didn't expect the Jets to be this good, record-wise and just play-wise, just because of the youth on their team. But no, because if you give them even a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, I think they're a Super Bowl contender. I really do, because their defense is super strong. They have the offensive line when healthy, and their offensive weapons are great. So if you're asking me currently what I would do, I would think you have to move on. I'd take a swing at Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. But I think he does deserve another shot, whether it be with the Jets or with someone else. But it's just so soon right now. It's fresh wound. So I don't know. The whole thing is really weird about how he acted about the whole situation and whatnot. But that's just what I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with Zach Wilson, and I think Mike hit this kind of on the nail, was he can't do the fundamentally strong aspects of a quarterback correctly. If you want to compete in a division where you're going to have to face Bill Belichick twice a year, and then a strong offense in Miami twice a year, and then a crazy offense in Buffalo twice a year, you need to have your fundamentals strong first. It's all about creating that foundation in order to develop and enhance your skill set, moving outside the pocket, making your offense dynamic. That being said, we know Breece Hall's out for the year. That limits the run game, so it kind of forces Zach Wilson to change it up. But he still can't do the things right. He faced Bill Belichick twice this year already and couldn't get over 100 yards passing in this game. To me, that it doesn't seem right for me, because between Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa, they were both able to do it. They were both able to do it pretty easily, excuse me, against a Bill Belichick defense. If Zach Wilson can't do it, I don't know if he ever will. He's able, like Mike said, he's been able to show flashes of being an impressive quarterback, but it all comes down to divisional play at the end of the day and winning those 9 or 6 games during the year against your divisional opponents. If he can't do that, I don't know if he will. I think at this point in the Jets building stage, I don't think they can afford to experiment with Wilson anymore. I think in the offseason, there's a potential you see them trade for a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. When the one name that comes to mind for me is Garoppolo. I think he's going to end up leaving San Francisco at some point. Who knows, depending on what the 49ers do. But I think there's a legit chance there. I think Aaron Rodgers is a possibility. Mike?
Yeah, I want to get into that too, unless it was a topic that we had planned, but Jimmy G is playing crazy.
He's playing awesome.
Like, he is playing really, really good football. He's on pace for one of his best seasons yet. He has 12 touchdown passes over the last 6 weeks, and we know Jimmy G is a guy who he can get the job done. We know he can do it. He went to the NFC Championship last year, made it to the Super Bowl a few years back, and he just does everything right, but he doesn't really wow you. He's putting up solid numbers for this season, and I think the 49ers are going to be at a real crossroads if they keep going, because I've said a few weeks back, and I still think so. 49ers scare me. They're one of the teams that really scared me, because last year when they made the playoffs, nobody really thought they would do anything, and they made it to the NFC Championship.
Yep.
Right.
They lost to the Rams.
Which is crazy. And I mean, they're just playing at a high level. McCaffrey definitely helps the offense out as well. So, I mean, we'll see.
In the words of a wise Colin Cowherd, Jimmy Garoppolo is the most disrespected quarterback in the NFL. I will leave it there. We'll see where things go with the Jets, to bring it back on topic. But yeah, I think they're at a point where they can't afford Zach Wilson to experiment anymore. Ben?
Yeah, no way. Jimmy G's the most disrespected quarterback in the NFL. I can think of 5 names. But to wrap it up with the Jets thing,
it's true.
This season, the only way that Zach Wilson is getting another start is if Joe Flacco and Mike White both implode. And they very well might be, because 3 of their upcoming games are against, I want to say, the Bills. I might have the Bills. No, Bills once, and they have the Vikings in there as well, and they have Miami to end off the season. So a few in-division matchups and difficult teams to face. Unless both of those backup quarterbacks provide nothing over Zach Wilson, which we already saw earlier in the season, Joe Flacco was able to do decent.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly in garbage time, but he was able to do decent with what's been provided to him. I think Zach Wilson doesn't get another shot this year. And if they're serious about what they see this year, they will not be continuing with Zach Wilson, which I think is unfortunate to say, because I do think this kid has raw talent with him. I think he has really great arm strength. I think he has one of the best deep balls still, but I think he just lacks fundamentals. He lacks something which, fortunately, I've seen with Justin Fields in the past couple weeks, which is just leadership. Justin Fields was able to play in that Atlanta fourth quarter pretty much with a dislocated or injured shoulder, and was still fighting in that game. And that really impressed me about Justin as an aside. But Zach Wilson really hasn't shown that, and we've seen that from what's coming out of the clubhouse. Transitioning over to San Francisco, and we can kind of talk about what you guys were saying about Jimmy Garoppolo. The Niners absolutely dominant in Mexico City a couple nights ago, dominating Arizona on both sides of the ball, winning 38-10. This was a really big win for San Francisco. They currently hold the division lead over the Seahawks because of their Week 2 win over Seattle. Do we think this San Francisco team is actually the biggest contender aside from Philly in the NFC?
No. It's a tough decision, but no. I think Dallas is right behind Philly still. I am very strong still on Dallas, despite their run defense being a little bit lackluster. I think San Francisco is definitely top 3. If I had to rank it right now, Philly, Dallas, and then San Francisco, it could sway in the next couple of weeks, because right now the Niners look hot and they look dangerous. And I think it's all because of the way Garoppolo's been able to form this offense so fast. And because Kittle's back healthy and he has his number 1 weapon with Debo and Ayuk, those 3 have been outstanding. Talk about that alone. Ayuk's been healthy and he's been scary on a deep ball threat. You have Debo on both the rush attack and the pass attack. And you've got Kittle on a healthy basis, who had 2 touchdowns in Mexico City last week. Both were impressive touchdowns. I think the first one was for 39, and then he had the second touchdown afterward.
The second one was impressive because the Arizona defense basically escorted him into the end zone. But go ahead.
Anyways, I think as we approach the back half of the season, San Francisco could very well become the top contender, because we've seen Philly in the last few weeks kind of show signs that they're vulnerable and human. I mean, they almost lost to the Colts this week. But yeah, I still have Dallas's too. That's just my personal preference. But yeah, I'm not going to jump on board with San Francisco being the top contender as of yet.
Mike, if you won't, I will.
I might take San Francisco as the top contender in the NFC.
I was close to saying that, but go with your bad self.
It's really close because I would take them over Dallas, and Dallas is 3.
I'll interrupt you there for a second, Mike. So what I'll say is this: like, this is going back to this was a matchup in the wild card game just a year ago.
Mhm.
Dallas is minus Randy Gregory, otherwise pretty much the same team, kind of. Christian McCaffrey is added to the Niners, pretty much the same Niner team otherwise. What was the biggest difference between the Niners and Cowboys last year? Coaching and issues at quarterback. They both had it, but Jimmy Garoppolo didn't make the mistake that killed their season. It was Dallas and Dak Prescott. I don't see any difference between what I've seen this season. Dallas is still limited on offense. They kind of have a Dak issue, but not really. Like, Dak's still good, but he's not going to be like over the top, which San Francisco has realized with now having forced to start Jimmy Garoppolo. Not over the top or anything, but he's good enough to keep you winning. He's not making mistakes, and still, like, I don't know, still hesitation with Dallas. Like, they had this big win against Minnesota, but just a week prior, they fell apart against a Green Bay team that's barely holding on to the playoffs, if even that. San Francisco, for me, and what we've seen from Philly the past couple weeks has been kind of a little scary because they haven't looked good on offense. They made a bunch of mistakes in that first loss to the Commanders. They almost lost the week prior to Houston, at least made it close. They almost lost again to Indy, made Jeff Saturday look pretty good. So, I don't know. San Francisco is a team for me that, as long as they have probably one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in football. The only hesitation is the quarterback. If Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't make mistakes, they are going to be continuing to win. Jalen Hurts puts Philly over the edge for me, probably, if I'm comparing them right now, but it's only because Jalen Hurts hasn't really shown what he can do in the playoffs. I have optimism that he can be better than whatever Jimmy Garoppolo is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the thing that why I would take San Francisco over Dallas is mainly the defense. I trust their defense a lot more. They've been more consistent than Dallas has defensively. Also, their offense is just a lot more scarier. I know Dallas is Tony Pollard and CD when he can get going. And it pains me not to mention Zeke, but he just hasn't.
He's not there.
He just hasn't been great. But San Francisco just says they can kill you in many different ways offensively. Defense will make the big stops, and I think they are the most complete team, maybe, NFC wise, because I trust Jimmy G enough. I don't love Jimmy G, but I trust him to get the job done. And I trust him to make the safe plays and not do anything stupid turnover wise and fumble interception wise.
Yeah, where I'm at with Jimmy G is this: if he isn't turning the ball over, completely fine with him being the San Francisco quarterback. Obviously, when Trey Lance is back and healthy, unless they win a Super Bowl this year, Trey Lance is taking that job back. If it's anything less than that, even if they go to a Super Bowl, I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo stays. I think you have to give Trey Lance, who has higher upside, a shot.
I think because they restructured Garoppolo's contract, he is gone after this year. No matter what happens, how far they go, Garoppolo is gone. If they win the Super Bowl, could be a different scenario. It's going to be a tough crossroads at that point. Is it likely? Who knows at this point? But
if they win a Super Bowl, he is not leaving.
No, I would pretty much agree with that. But any other scenario that happens, Garoppolo's gone. I think he's going to end up in a team that needs a Pro Bowl quarterback in order to maintain the Super Bowl running. Hence why we mentioned the Jets earlier on. I think that's a very likely spot for somebody like Garoppolo, maybe even Washington, if Washington continues to develop over the next few weeks. I don't know. Just throwing names out there, but at the end of the day, this team is scary. I will very much agree with you both on that. I don't know. We'll see in the coming weeks. I'm still sold on Dallas, but
I am too, and I'm not taking anything away from Dallas. I just like San Francisco more.
I think the thing that surprises me the most about Dallas is their pass rush this year, which has surprisingly been a lot better than what people gave it. So many people gave credit the pass rush last year to strictly Micah Parsons, and Randy Gregory was the complement. But you factor out Randy Gregory this year, they're actually better. They're top 5 in pass rush this year. They're over 50% in their pass rush win rate. That's better than teams like Kansas City, San Francisco, Buffalo. Let's look at the Giants as well, who've had a really strong pass rush this year, better than all of them. And that's without Randy Gregory. You downgraded a little bit to Dante Fowler, but Fowler's been absolutely exceptional. You still have Taco Charlton, and you've got why am I blanking? Micah Parsons. So if they're able to get a nose tackle in the offseason to help bolster up the front four, that team's just about complete, and it scares me a lot to say, because I think Mike McCarthy's finally found a playbook on both sides of the ball where they can succeed. So I think this year's going to be close, but next season, that could be the best team in the NFC, but we'll see.
Not if they lose both their coordinators. And just as a cherry on top, if we're throwing names out there, said that San Francisco, Philly was probably those top 2. If we were talking playoffs, I'd take Tampa Bay over all of them. And that's where we'll end that.
Yeah.
I would take Tampa Bay over all of them. But we can move on. We did mention Washington in there briefly, Brett did. So why don't we even segue over to them? Washington, 4-1 over their last 5 games since Taylor Heineke has taken over under center for the Commanders. They've also been really good in the turnover battle recently. They've had 10 turnovers in their past 5 games, had some really big games against Green Bay in there. They're just past weekend against Houston, they absolutely dominated the Texans, making them even switch off of Davis Mills. So bye-bye Giraffe. Bye-bye baby Giraffe, I should say. So for the Commanders, they are right outside of a playoff spot right now. What do we want to give bigger credit to their success? Taylor Heineke taking over as the starting quarterback, or the defense really dominating the takeaway battle?
I'm always going to give credit to their defense first. I think in the past few weeks, with the defensive line finally starting to piece together and get healthy again, and with especially Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen really taking away the majority of the opponent's run game this season. When they took on Philly, they pretty much had their run game in check. All their other weeks, they've pretty much had the run game in check. And I think that's been one of their bigger components this year. So I'm always going to give the defense the credit first. But I think people have to give a little bit more respect to Heineke in these types of cases, because last year, I don't think anyone kind of expected Washington to go anywhere with Heineke. Sort of exceeded a little bit, but this year he's taken it an extra step and put them in a position right outside of the playoffs again, where they weren't even expecting him to be the starting quarterback in the first place. Same thing with San Francisco. They're first place in the division right now. Didn't even consider Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback. So you have to give respect to Heineke where it's due, and I think this is the case. But at the end of the day, I think the defense deserves the most credit.
Every time I think of Taylor Heineke, I think of the game against the Bucks in the playoffs, the year the Bucks won the Super Bowl. Washington played them the best in that whole playoffs. And I believe he was a starter. Yeah, he was. You get a credit to the defense, though. Taylor Heineke does what he needs to, but stats-wise, he isn't, overly impressive. He does what they need, and I think the team and the locker room and just everything around Taylor Heineke just seems a lot better, and I think the team kind of gets behind Heineke more than they do Carson Wentz, just based off the eye test and just what it looks like. Seems like they really love Heineke, and I think he deserves it. He plays well, and keeps them in games, and they're what, 6-5 right now,
Yep.
and he's 4-1 or something like that as a starter this year. Yeah. So with all credit to him, but more credit to the defense. They also have Chase Young coming back finally after like a year, so that
Mhm.
should help a little. Even if he, kind of off to a slow start, but Washington should be getting better. They just got Jahan Dotson back too, so they could make a late playoff push. But we'll see. I think they'll be in the hunt for a while.
I'm going to give credit to the D being able to win the takeover battle. I think that's really important. They've been playing up to their opponent and even a little bit better in the case of some of their more recent games. Almost were able to beat Minnesota a couple weeks back, so that was big. My stance with Taylor Heineke is this. We've already seen him start for a full season, and they were 6-11. So the way that I see it, he's fine for the rest of the year, but he cannot be your solution at quarterback. Unfortunately, he is limited, and he doesn't provide anything to where I think it would be like a situation with San Francisco where they're so great everywhere else that quarterback can just be mediocre. And even Jimmy Garoppolo is like top 15, top 18 quarterback at the very least. I don't think Taylor Heineke's that, and Washington isn't as great as San Francisco is all around the field. So I don't think that's sustainable for them to keep Heineke. But I think for the run that he's going on right now, he's been a very good game manager. Antonio Gibson's been kind of integrated back into the offense. Terry McLaurin has been really good since Heineke's taken back over under center. So that's really good for the offense. So they're able to get their two biggest playmakers going with Heineke under center, which is good, taking a little bit of pressure off of the defense. And like I mentioned, they've been really playing up to snuff. So I think you still want to give credit to the defense, but Heineke deserves a start for the rest of the season. After that, kind of have to see where they have to go. So for our last topic here, just on the main portion of the pod, talking about the Sunday night game, which played up to the usual effect that it does. Chiefs and Chargers, they always play each other very well. Mahomes versus Herbert. Great game. Ended up coming down to the last couple minutes. Chiefs were able to get a last-minute touchdown from Travis Kelce, his third of the day. And then Mike's boy was able to pick up Mike's other boy. Nick Bolton was able to pick off Justin Herbert to end the game. So a 30-27 victory for the Chiefs. Mahomes does it again. He is now winning 60% of the games that he trails by 10 or more points. That includes the playoffs. Guys, if we were to think of one thing that is going to stop the Chiefs from winning the Super Bowl, it can be a team, it can be a thing about the Chiefs. What would it be?
I think it's what affected them last year in the playoffs, and it's their defense. They did get stronger, but still, I'm not in love with them. Pass rush wise, George Karlaftis, their rookie edge rusher, he was supposed to come in and be, the guy on their line alongside Chris Jones, and he just hasn't been living up to that really. And last year in the playoffs, they were up by 20 or so to Cincinnati at the half, and they didn't really score offensively. Their defense let up the lead, and Cincinnati won, ended up going to the Super Bowl. I do think the Chiefs are the best team in the league currently, and I don't think there's a team that I see higher than them. So I just think them not playing to how they can defensively, because you know what Mahomes can do, and you know how through adversity he can come back, and it doesn't really seem to phase him much. So I just think them kind of not giving up, but kind of playing lax really defensively when they're up big in the game.
For me, I think of two things. One, it's the defense for the Chiefs. Mike hit on the nail with it. I think there are points where they can absolutely get vulnerable, especially in high-scoring games, and they tend to fall back and play a little more conservative. The second thing is the Miami Dolphins. I think they are the team this year that takes down Kansas City. I think especially in this point of the season, this is where Miami's going to get hot and they're going to get good. Now that Jeff Wilson is really becoming the premier back for the Dolphins, they now have a run game that they can rely on a little bit with a pass catching element in Jeff Wilson. You now have Hill and Waddle fully healthy. Mike Gesicki starting to get more consistent targets from Tua Tagovailoa. And the offensive line, most importantly, is at a point where it is fully healthy. Your defense is keeping you in games. I'd like to see a little bit more, consistency out of the secondary, especially if you're going to play a team like Kansas City, but I don't think it's going to be too much of a concern going forward. But I don't know. I think this team is going to get to a point where they're going to be in a close game with the Chiefs. And I think you could very well see it in the playoffs, especially with the way the AFC East standings are getting. Both of these offenses are at a point where they can compete with each other in terms of wide receiver win rates with the secondary, in terms of getting to the quarterback and applying pressure. I just think this is a matchup where you can see it being a shootout, and I can definitely see Miami winning this game.
Now, I have a question for you.
Have an answer.
Does just thinking of hypotheticals, if this game did happen in the playoffs, does the familiarity from the Chiefs defense with Tyreek Hill and him playing them against him in practice every single day, does that mean anything to you, or do you just think his speed can kill them?
I think at the end of the day, yes, they're going to have familiarity with Tyreek Hill, having practiced with him for several years, especially for some of the veterans on that Chiefs defense. But you also have to remember, it's not just the Tyreek Hill show. They have Trent Sherfield. They have Jalen Waddle, who has speed and can kill. There's just so many things besides Tyreek Hill, and that's what makes – all right, if you're going to laugh, laugh. But at the end of the day, I think there's a lot more elements to this Dolphins offense than what we expect. And it's not the only element that they can run with. They've shown that they have a multi-dynamic offense. But no, I don't think it's an element. I think at the end of the day, the Chiefs are going to have to play two different strengths that they've done with all season, especially with teams like Miami and Buffalo that we've seen before, where they're going to have to play a little bit more small ball and incorporate the Kelce's, the Schmidt-Schusters of the world. And Miami's going to have to do the same thing. But I don't know. There's so many things that can happen from now and then. It's up in the air. But I think the Dolphins, at the end of the day, with everything said, are the team that can take down the Chiefs this year.
We were giggling because you mentioned Trent Sherfield without hesitation over Jalen Waddle first. But I want to address this real quick. So, Brett, I'll ask you a question now. Do you think Miami has a better defense than Kansas City? Because I think it's way worse.
In certain aspects, yes.
I think it's way worse. I think they have a worse pass rush. I think their secondary is pretty much the same, but Kansas City probably has younger guys, so I'd probably take Miami's experience with like Xavier Howard, guys of that nature. And then look at the coaching. You got a rookie head coach, Mike McDaniel, Andy Reid. That's kind of where it ends for me, to be honest. And I'm not even getting to the quarterback conversation. I think that's a valid argument, and I think you're stemming it from what Cincinnati was able to do last year.
That's what I was just about to say.
A young, powerful offense going into Kansas City with a not the best defense among the top contenders, but one that can be exposed. And I understand where you're coming from. The difference for me, maybe I'm not living in the moment as much as I should. I would trust Joe Burrow way more in that moment than I would Tua.
Yes.
That's just me.
I agree.
I think that my headphones are coming out. I'm so surprised. I would just trust Joe Burrow way more in that moment. I think the situations are very comparable, but when it comes to those two guys, me personally, I would just trust Burrow way more.
I just looked because I was curious defensive ranking wise. They're right on the same. Kansas City is 19th and Miami's 21st.
Yeah.
And Kansas City lets up 7 less yards per game. So they're right around the same. I think they're, for the most part, equal. I just think Kansas City overall has more power, and that's tough
So-
I
to
think
say.
I think it's so easy to go with Kansas City because Ben pretty much nailed it all. Andy Reid versus Mike McDaniel, veteran versus rookie head coach. Obviously, you're going to go with Andy Reid. He's right about the defense. Miami's defense is worse than Kansas City's as a whole. There are a few players that obviously are better than Kansas City, but as the team, worse. It all comes down to the offenses at this point. And this is where my argument kind of stems from, the young and powerful nature of it. Honestly, I think at this point in the stage, you have a good argument with Burrow and Tua. I think Tua is a lot more trustworthy in this situation than a lot of people can give him credit for. He's only got 3 turnovers on the season this far. Joe Burrow's get 8. Only 3 turnovers this season from Tua.
I think Burrow's numbers are turnover wise are kind of faulty because of that.
And I
Week
also
1
want to add
foot.
in something here, Mike. What did Aaron Rodgers do last year? He was so great. Great touchdown to interception ratio, but wouldn't make any tricky throws. Tua, albeit he is trying to take more shots than Aaron Rodgers does. Tua gets bailed out by his receivers sometimes, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, because they're faster and they're able to, if it's a deep ball that's underthrown, they're able to get to it and either catch it or make sure it's not picked off. Tua, I'm not going to make him seem any better just because he's had limited turnovers. I have questions about his arm. We've never seen him in the playoffs before. You could say the same thing about Joe Burrow the previous year. But my only argument with Joe Burrow is composure, the way that we've seen him play before, the leadership that he has presented, both on and off the field. I would have trusted him in that situation. Probably wouldn't have predicted him to win with Kansas City. So with your argument here, it's obviously not one that is easy to win, or not should win, but like not one that you can make sound convincing. I get where you're coming from though, because I've been tooting Miami's horn pretty much all year.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to say with Kansas City is though, and this is where I would say their biggest weakness would come in. I think if they get to too big of a lead, they won't be able to hold it. And what I mean by this is look at that exact championship game against Cincinnati. They had a 2-score lead. Mahomes lost his touch. And then Cincinnati just went on a run on offense. Mahomes wasn't able to find it in time, and Cincinnati won. Because they were up so big, they really just became lackadaisical on offense. Mahomes is great from playing from behind because he's able to stay in tune with his mechanics and everything. He's able to keep pretty much the game plan going forth. If they go up big against the Miami, against the Cincinnati that are all quick score teams, that's really dangerous, especially with all the stuff that you guys are saying about their defense. Like 5 of their 7 starting guys in the secondary are rookies. That's going to be exposed if given the opportunity. So,
Agreed.
All right, so we will wrap it up here with our main segment of the 3 and Out Pod. If you're enjoying what you've heard so far, make sure to give a like and subscribe if you're enjoying it. Check us out on all social medias, 3 and Out Pod 1. But guys, it's a return of the 2-minute drill. We're going back to the 2-minute drill with a kind of branch segment here, but it's still going to be pretty quick to the point. We did this earlier on this season, but since we're getting a little closer to playoff time, I think it's a good time to have this reemerge, and we are playing playoff or takeoff with 6 teams that are on the fringe of the playoff brink right now. And we're going to see what Mike and Brett think. Are these teams playoff teams, or are they ready to take off and go on a vacation? I'm not going to mention the Denver Broncos here because they are pretty much in takeoff mode. Sorry, I just had to throw that one in there. Didn't even cover Devontae Adams on the last play of the game.
Oh, let's not talk about it. They're in takeoff.
All right.
Hand on the point there.
Wasn't planning on doing it. So we're going to first talk about probably under the radar surprise team, and just because they don't have a winning record and they've still been a little iffy, it's the Atlanta Falcons. They moved to 5-6 on the season with a win over the Chicago Bears. Whether you want to blame it on Justin Fields' injury or not, I do, but we won't say that. They are still in contention for the NFC South title. They're only a half game behind of the Buccaneers right now. Marcus Mariota has been solid. Not great, but solid. They just lost Kyle Pitts, probably for the year, for an MCL sprain. He just got placed on IR, so this is a difficult one here. Atlanta Falcons, are they playoff or takeoff for you, Mike?
Their takeoff. I mean, they had a really, really good start to the season, and they've really impressed me. I didn't think they would be much of anything, but the fact that we're even talking about them here is impressive. I just see other teams coming up now, kind of a late resurgence in the year, in the NFC, getting in over them, i.e. Seattle and Washington, really.
Hold your horses there, dude. Let's get to them later. Brett, go ahead. What do you think about Atlanta?
I think there's a chance they're playoff. I think there is a chance. There's such an easy decision to make them take off, but if you break down the rest of their schedule, they have relatively 3 games that they have to win if they want a shot at the playoffs. It's this week against the Commanders. If they beat Washington, there's a chance at that wild card spot. Then you have 2 games at the end of the year with the Ravens in Baltimore and their last game of the season against the Buccaneers in Atlanta. If you're able to win those 3 games, or maybe at least 2 out of the 3, one of them including the Tampa Bay game, I think you've got a shot realistically at the playoffs. Because if you take down the Commanders, that opens up that last wild card spot. And if you take down the Buccaneers in that last game of the season, that splits up the NFC South odds with you and the Buccaneers. And that gives you the open chance at that wild card spot. I think it's definitely doable for the Falcons. If they lose that game against Tampa Bay, it's easily takeoff. They're done, because then that gives the Bucs the open look towards the division. But if they're able to take 2 out of the 3, one of them being the Bucs game, they're in.
What's Atlanta's record right now?
They are 5-6. Tampa Bay is 5-5 because they have the bye this week.
5-6. No, I don't see them getting in.
I was interested at first that you guys weren't mentioning the division, but Brett mentioned it there at the end. We will go to one team outside the playoffs. One team that's actually holding a playoff spot as of now, the 6th seed in the AFC. That is the New England Patriots. We mentioned them winning this past weekend. As Mike giggles, I think I know his answer. Patriots win this past weekend 10-3 over the Jets. A little bit of struggles for Mac Jones since he's come back under center, but it looks like Matthew Judon and the defense have it covered, at least for this week. We'll go with Brett first on this one. Are the Patriots playoff or takeoff?
Takeoff. I think they're takeoff. Their schedule is ridiculous to go through the last few games. They've got to play Miami again, Buffalo, Minnesota, and Cincinnati. They've got a couple sprinkle games between the Cardinals and Raiders, but when you're taking on Buffalo twice, Miami and Cincinnati, plus Minnesota this Thursday, I don't know. I don't see it happening. I give all the respect in the world to Bill Belichick's defense and the way he can limit certain offenses, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how much Mac Jones and this Patriots attack can stay in competition with all of these ridiculous high-powered offenses. I don't think they can do it with Miami. They already proved it. I don't think they can do it with the Bengals. I don't think they're going to win against Minnesota this Thursday. It ain't happening for me with the Patriots.
Agreed. Their takeoff, they're not winning more than 2 more games on the year.
And it won't be anything more than the Raiders and the Cardinals games. Glad we're in agreement here. We will go on to the team that we just finished talking about a few minutes ago, the Washington Commanders.
Mike, you want to start this one off?
Yeah, I will say playoffs. I will say playoffs. I'm confident in them, kind of,
Are you?
a little bit. They've been promising recently, and I think their momentum will keep them going and slip into that last spot. And I think it's only due to how weak the rest of the conference is. If you want me to name teams, I will, but we might save those until later on.
No, you're good. Just before Brett goes, I'll mention what their schedule is looking like. They have the Falcons, the Giants twice, the Niners, the Browns, and the Cowboys to finish off the year.
I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like takeoff to me. I'm not trusting Washington against this schedule at the end. Give or take with Cleveland. I don't know how they're going to be with Watson back at that point, but they have to play the Giants twice. And if I'm comparing the two in divisional matchups, I'm taking the Giants, especially with the way they've been playing. I'm taking Dallas over Washington.
I don't think the gap is that big.
Really?
I don't.
See, I disagree. I think Dallas, I
don't.
think the Giants are going to outcoach the Commanders in both games.
No, I mean, I don't think the gap is that big. I think the Giants. I mean, Wandale Robinson tearing his ACL. I know he hasn't done much, but that's going to affect them. I think
that is a big thing, Mike.
I
At
think
least for me personally.
also Adoree Jackson, their number one corner, being out 4 to 6 weeks is going to affect them. I don't think they're going to completely fall off, but I definitely do think you will see the Giants kind of take a step back for the rest of the season. I really don't think the gap is that big between Washington and the Giants. I see them splitting with them, honestly. If we're being honest, I see a split between those two teams.
So let's say theoretically they split in those two games. You still have the 49ers to deal with.
That's
you
a
have
lot.
the Falcons this week.
That's a win.
I think it's much more even than we're giving it. I think.
What do you see in Atlanta?
What do I see in Atlanta?
Yes.
The fact that their defense is able to keep them in games.
Okay. Same thing with Washington now. You can make a case for that side too. And then it comes back to which offense do you trust more? And I'm trusting Washington.
See, I trust Atlanta.
What do you see in Atlanta that has you trust, especially with Kyle Pitts being out? I know he hasn't done much, but
I just think with Cordero Patterson being back and fully healthy, the run game has been strong. Mariota's got a two-way style to the offense. Zacchaeus has been strong as a wide receiver. I know he's not a stud, but he's been reliable for Marcus Mariota, and he's been able to be protected. And I think that allows them to work the two-way offense. Well, I understand the whole thing with Heineke and being reliant with McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, all those guys on Washington. But I look at the end of the day, I honestly put more faith in this Atlanta coaching staff and play calling than Washington. That's just me. It can be swayed either way, but I'm going to give more faith in Mariota in this case. The defense, again, either way, let's call it an even split. 50-50 shot between Washington and Atlanta. You have a split between the Giants in both games, back-to-back. Then you have the 49ers, Browns, and Cowboys to finish the season. That's 0-3 if you're going to call it to me, at least.
It's tough to gauge Cleveland. I don't think we really can. I don't think anyone can say right now.
I'm looking at them in the sense that Watson's going to come back and
he hasn't played in 2 years. Well, that's the thing.
That's the big thing. I'm looking at it right now as if Watson's going to play like Watson. If he doesn't play like Watson,
they're end the year.
Yeah, that's a maybe 1-2. You take the win with Cleveland, but you lose to Dallas and San Fran. That's 2 divisional losses you have in your next 5 games between the Giants in that split, then the Cowboys in the final game of the year.
Well, let's go to this then. We'll go to the Giants next as the next team. With all the things that we mentioned with Adoree Jackson out, Wandale Robinson out, playoff or takeoff. We'll go with Brett.
I have them as playoff right now, but again, it's all going to depend on how Atlanta, Washington, and Seattle finish the season, and if the Giants really do take a step back. If they continue to win, the Giants are in, but if they do take as big of a step back as we're predicting right now, it could be different.
So give me a straight answer.
Playoff.
There we go. Mike?
Playoff. And I think they're going to struggle the rest of the way because their schedule is tough. I just think their strong start will help them out. They're probably going to sneak in. I think they're going to, I mean, you look at their schedule right here. Here's the rest of their schedule. Dallas, Washington, Philly, Washington, Minnesota, Indy, Philly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You give them 5 losses, they're 9 and 8. 9 and 8, which I think you can sneak in the NFC anyways at 9 and 8. But I do think they're gonna struggle a little bit. And if they don't, and if they do play well, I'll be surprised and I'll be impressed. I just think their injuries, right? There are 2 injuries off Wandale and Adoree Jackson. I think they're going to be big, and I don't think enough people are talking about that for the Giants.
Well, let's go to the last NFC team here because I want to see if my calculations on the side here are correct. And that would be the Seahawks. Seahawks coming off their bye this past weekend. They are going to be playing Vegas on Sunday. Are they playoff or takeoff with the success that they've had so far? We'll go to Mike first.
They're playoff. I don't know. Their schedule the rest of the way is fair, and I see them winning a good. What are they? 6-4.
They're 6-4.
They're 6-4. I don't really see them falling off. I mean, I'll give you my wild card teams. I have, I think it's going to be the 3 potential NFC East teams, whoever the 3 are, whatever that standing going to be, and or Seattle. So I think those 4 are going to be in contention for the 3 wild card spots.
I think they're also playoff. Like Mike said, I think their schedule's, I don't think it's crazy hard. I don't think it's crazy easy. It's fair. They've got 2 games against the Rams. I think they split there. They've also got the Chiefs mixed in there with San Francisco in the divisional matchup.
Can you read it?
Yeah. So this week they're playing the Raiders on Sunday.
Okay.
Then they go in Los Angeles to play the Rams. Then they're back home for a 2-game stint with the Panthers in San Francisco. Then they go to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. And then they finish the season at home in the last 2 weeks with the Jets and the Rams. I think you have wins at least in one of the 2 games with LA, Carolina, and the Jets.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm now realizing is that the 6 and 7 seed in the NFC are probably going to have like 9 wins.
Yeah. It's going to come down to how good the NFC East finishes. If Washington, Dallas, and the Giants all finish with strong positive records, all 3 of them take the wild card spots.
Well, I lock in, like in my head, lock in teams like Miami. I have locked into the playoffs.
Yep.
And same with Dallas. I don't really see them as but there's 2 spots after that, and it's the Giants, Washington, and Seattle for me. I don't see any other team in the NFC beating them out for it. You asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said Green Bay, but they have 7 losses now, I believe, and I just think that's too much to come back from.
Same thing with Denver. Way too much to come back from.
Well,
I don't know about that. I'd classify those 2 teams as one still has a shot and one is dead in the water. But we'll move on. Last 2 teams here, both AFC teams. We'll start off with the Chargers. Lost to the Chiefs this past weekend, but made some pretty good momentum. Had Mike Williams back for part of the game, got re-injured in that game. Keenan Allen looks back. Doesn't seem like he's having any setbacks. So getting some pieces back on offense. Hopefully can get some pieces back on defense in the next couple weeks. Chargers, are they playoff or takeoff? We'll start with Brett.
For me, they're playoff. I think this is a pretty easy one for me, at least. Now that the Jets are discombobulated with who the hell is starting a quarterback, I'm pretty much factoring them out of the playoffs at this point, at least in my perspective. Then that leaves the Patriots, the Browns, which I don't even look at either at this point.
You threw their name out there, though. You are thinking about them.
The Browns, and then the Bengals. The Bengals too. I think the Bengals and the Ravens will fight for that division title. One of them will get the wild card. Then that means it's New England, one of either Baltimore, Cincinnati, then the Chargers. I don't think this is much of a decision for me. I don't know. You have Miami as well, depending on who wins the AFC East. I think the LA Chargers are in. I think this is playoff. We'll see how it goes at the end.
Yeah, it's playoff. They've had a tough season. The Chargers. They've had a really tough season. A lot of injuries, but
Playing my sad violin for you, Mike.
I get it. I get it. I think they're gonna end up. They're gonna end up in though. Playoffs for the Chargers. Playoffs for the Bulls. Playoff for the Chargers.
And I'm assuming you're with Brett here because he pretty much already answered his for the Jets, their takeoff.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
Unless you're saying the Bengals or one of those other teams are out.
No. I mean, it's say Buffalo and Baltimore hypothetically win their divisions. I don't see any other team beating out Miami, Cincy, and the Chargers. And I think those three, are my wild card teams: Baltimore, Cincy, whatever happens in Miami and Buffalo. And I think there's a drop off after those teams. After the wild card teams, I think there's a drop off. If the Raiders kept Bisaccia, they're a playoff team. But
I agree. I 1,000% agree with that, but they didn't, and they blow. So.
That's for a later date. That's for
and
a later
the
date.
Broncos are trash. Right, I need to take
Broncos are hiring
Rich Bisaccia.
No. Don't take
I heard there were rumors they want Sean Payton, but that's for a later date.
Yeah, you won't get it.
I also read that Sean Payton wants to go to a team with an already developed quarterback. Hint, hint, Chargers, hint, hint.
You really think they're going to let go of Brandon Staley?
I think they have to.
Yeah. Why would you not?
I think they have to.
You're kidding.
I mean, I love Staley. I do. I just don't. I think he's one of the guys who are just a great coordinator and not a head coach. I mean, you see it all the time. My favorite coach in the league is like that. Todd Bowles, great coordinator. I love Todd Bowles so much.
Todd Bowles is the man.
Great coordinator, but head coach wise, McDaniels. Look at him. I think Staley is the same thing. I really like Staley a lot. I just don't think he's the guy for the job.
We are moving on here on 3 Now Pod to our games of the week here in week 12. Seems like Mike is really excited about one of these picks here. Maybe not about his own, but with Brett's. We'll go to Mike first, and we'll go to myself and Brett to wrap it up. So, Mike, what is your game of the week here in week 12?
My game of the week is the Bengals at the Titans. These are two teams, two potential division winners. We know Tennessee most likely will. And Cincinnati is a good shot too for their division. I think this game will give us a fair gauge onto how these teams will compete going forward. Joe Burrow just mentioned earlier today that Jamar Chase will most likely be suiting up, and he's only missed 2-3 games. So it's way ahead of schedule. So the Bengals should be at full strength offensively. And the Titans, we continue to see the emergence of Treylon Burks, hopefully. See if there's anything there. So yeah, should be a good one. These teams go in. Bengals at 6-4, Titans at 7-3. So we should see a nice little matchup, nice little AFC matchup there for us.
Mine is the Sunday night game. It is the Packers visiting Philadelphia to play the Eagles. Somewhat of a renaissance game for Jalen Hurts a little bit because he made his, I believe, either his NFL debut or his first start against Green Bay. It's Green Bay, New Orleans. He made his first start against one, made his first appearance in the NFL against the other. But this is really important for Green Bay because I believe both of you have written them off, but I am still holding on to that like last like strand of hair, like that they might be something. This is basically a lose and you're out of the playoffs for Green Bay. If they win, I don't know, 5-7, a little frisky. Still keeping optimism up there, especially with the Eagles not playing well the past couple weeks. So it doesn't look that unfathomable for Green Bay, but hold out some optimism. We'll see what they're able to do. So I'm taking the Sunday night game, Green Bay against Philly.
My game of the week is the 1:00 slotted NFC matchup between Atlanta and Washington. This is basically the game for me where if you win, this could very well be the 7th seed in the NFC playoffs. Both of these teams are pretty evenly matched. Washington 6-5, Atlanta the reverse at 5-6. But if they win, they're 500. I don't know. We talked about this a lot earlier, where both of these teams, you look at them comparison wise, they're pretty even. And if I'm gonna pick a bet here, Atlanta might have a little bit of the upper edge in this scenario just because the dynamicism of their offense. Again, it could go either way. Pretty even matchup. And like I said, whoever wins this could very well end up being the 7th seed in the NFC playoffs. So big game for both of them. A lot at stake. I have Atlanta and Washington.
We love to see a Brett versus Mike prove themselves right game because that's probably why Brett picked that. But we'll be moving on to our stands of the week, week 11. We had plenty of stands to go around. I'm going to go first because I want to claim this. I am a Cordero Patterson stan. So Cordero Patterson with his 9th return touchdown of his career, return back for a score. That is now the most in NFL history. So congratulations to Cordero Patterson. Had a very good game for Atlanta. Basically was one of the deciding plays in their 27-24 victory against Chicago. So Cordero Patterson coming back maybe is a big factor in this game that Brett's predicting that Atlanta wins. Maybe not, but Cordero Patterson for setting that NFL record, first stand of the week.
I will go next. Shout out JC. I'm a Kittle over the middle George Kittle stan.
That wasn't cringe.
Shout out JC. But George Kittle, 2 big touchdowns, his most productive game of the season this far with Jimmy Garoppolo. We talked about it a little earlier, the 39-yard tutty, and then the private escort, quote unquote, from the Arizona defense into the end zone has been put earlier. Big day out of George Kittle. You love to see it. He's back. I'm a Kittle over the middle stan.
All right, Mike.
My first stand is someone, you wouldn't really think about because he's on kind of an irrelevant team. One of my favorites is Chris Olave. Chris Olave is quietly the best rookie receiver. And he's been really good this year. He's top 10 in receiving yards, and he's that trustworthy guy in the Saints offense. So we love to see that. Just to name his stats real quick, he had 102 receiving yards on 5 receptions and a touchdown. Gets the job done against Brett's LA Rams. Is that Brett's 4th favorite team?
It's now my 3rd favorite team. Seattle is now my 2nd favorite team.
Nope, you can't change it.
Well, it's changed, so deal with it.
Because he's dropped off Denver? Or Pittsburgh, which one?
Pittsburgh.
No, you didn't. It goes...
They dropped off the Steelers?
They lost by 7 to Cincinnati. They put up a good fight, Brett. So ranking...
Let's just put it this way. My rankings, besides Denver, are so messed up, it's so hard for even myself to keep track of.
That's why we're keeping track of it for you.
All right. Well,
all we need to know is Denver's number 1.
Denver's 1.
All right,
Pittsburgh 2,
all right.
Seattle
Let
3,
Benny
LA
speak.
Rams 4.
Let Benny speak.
We'll move on.
Atlanta Falcons are 5 now. Atlanta Falcons are 5. There we go.
There we go. Mike, for Brett, things always change. But for me, things always stay the same. I'm a T. Higgins stan. Very on brand for me. T. Higgins better than Jamar Chase? Didn't say yes or no. 9 catches for 148 yards for T. Higgins against the Steelers. Their secondary is garbage. And, of course, T. Higgins took advantage of that one. Pretty much sealed the deal for the Bengals in this game. Samaje Perine had a big game as well with 3 touchdowns, but Higgins was getting all the big receptions. We'll have to see how their roles stay the same, differ when Jamar Chase comes back. Still say that T. Higgins is probably the most important player to Joe Burrow on this offense, and I stand by that. And he is my second stand of the week.
Now, let's not poop on Levi Wallace here in the Steelers secondary. Levi Wallace had an interception. I'm going to stand up for him there.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that was ticked by T.J. Watt. T.J. Watt's the only good player on the Steelers.
Anyway.
Oh, my God.
I have a duo for my last stand. I'm a Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift stan. 4 touchdowns between the two men in the game against the Giants. 3 from Big Jamal, 1 of them from DeAndre Swift. Lions' run game is resurged. Phenomenal day in the red zone from these two men. I am a Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift stan.
See, you got a duo. I got a straight D line.
Oh my God.
Shout out the Cowboys defensive line. They are all of them.
I said this
on my stands this week. 7 sacks total against the Vikings, held the Vikings to 232 yards total through there and on the ground. Huge win and game for the Dallas defense in general. And shout out the D-line, Weedham boys.
Sam Williams, shout out him. Micah Parsons, shout out him. Dante Fowler, shout out him.
Keep going.
Randy Gregory. Oh, wait.
Please.
Keep going.
Well, that is all we have here.
Ben's boy, Dorrance Armstrong. Shout out him.
Oh, yeah.
DeMarcus Lawrence, shout out him.
Shout out Tank.
Are we done?
Jonathan Hankins, shout out him. Just
okay, we'll move on. And that's all we've got here on the 3 and Out podcast for this week's episode. Guys, if you enjoyed it, make sure to drop a comment down below. Tell us what you thought about the episode. Give us a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Check us out on all social medias, 3 and Out Pod 1. Everyone, if you're celebrating Thanksgiving, have a great Turkey Day. Hope everyone has a great day and watch some football as well. We've got some good action on Thursday. But for Mike Cicchetti and Brett Shavs, I'm Ben Pope. Take care. Shave your hair?